So this is our assistant division manager, Damian Scott. Damian actually runs the San Marcos office. You just saw his name there twice, one of the top 10 offices in the country, making a move to be the #1 office in the country, on track to be the national championship district. What does that mean? That basically means that him and all the people that he works with, that he recruited, that he trained, that he developed, are #1 in the country. So you're literally getting training from the best trainer in the company. Okay. No, it's happening. Look at all those people. All you guys see at Marcus, we're going to highlight all of you if you're going to watch it. Look at them all and go, we are champions. And you're going to be.
No celebration. No celebration.
I didn't say celebrate. I said celebrate. I said expect. But anyway, Damian's career sales, his personal career sales are close to $500,000 of personal career sales. That's where he went out and did orders. His career sales of training people are now over $7.5 million, on way to the Cutco Hall of Fame, by the way. He's going to get that whenever he hits $20 million as a division manager. That's an inside joke that you guys don't understand, but Damian understands it. Damian understands it. So anyway, guys, I'm going to turn things over to Damian. He has some great information for you. Take really good notes. Pay full attention. It is all yours, sir.
Awesome. So I'm going to be starting by asking a question. So if you're in my office, you might have heard this answer. However, you can unmute yourself if you want or answer freely. But my first question is, what's the definition of a sale?
Anybody?
How would you define it? You can write this down if you want. If you're not the kind of person that wants to like say stuff out loud, but if anybody does, you can put it in the chat box or you can answer freely. How would you define a sale? How would you define a sale? Like what's happening? What would you have to look at for you to call something a sale?
The person would be fully committed to your product.
Okay, so someone that's fully committed to a product. What else?
Somebody's super excited, they're like, oh my gosh, what? I love that.
So somebody being excited.
I've seen that happen.
Cool. Anybody else? Them buying. I mean, that would be a sale, right? So the way I understand a sale is it's transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. The transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another is the definition of a sale. All right. So let's really break it down into the philosophy. Some of you guys kind of love knowing like where stuff comes from, right? So I'm going to basically explain to you the 7 steps to a sale. So every time you're making a sale, you want to make sure that you can check off all these 7 steps. As long as you did all 7, you've done your job. All right. So number 1 is building rapport. Basically a fancy French word for getting to know somebody. Number 2 is establishing a general problem. Okay, so what's the problem that we establish when we do? All right. Next is establishing a specific problem. So what are some of the specific things you talk about in relationship to cheap crap knives? What are some of the features that you discuss? Handles, the rivets, the blades, the different styles and finishes of their knives, germs. Offer a solution. What's the solution? That's right. Compare pricing with competitors, right? So you talk about Chicago Dollery, you talk about Henckels, you talk about Woosnot, right? Offer the incentive to buy today, right? So what's the greatest thing in the world? Cutco. What's the only thing greater than Cutco? Free Cutco. That's it. Other than that, I know my grandma's like baking, but like it's kind of a tough toss-up. And next is you have to. You got to ask for the order. You can't for them to ask you. You're gonna get to the end of the order and be like, "Excuse me, ting 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 ting. Can I buy these knives, please?" It's never gonna happen. Okay. The more sought after the type of person you're talking to, the more persistent you're going to have to be when asking them for the order. Think about Mrs. Jones, like she's like the hottest girl in school, right? Imagine if you only one time. It'd be so lame. She'd be like, that's it. She's like, oh no, I'm busy. I'm fine. You're like, okay, well, thanks anyways. And you just walk away.
That's adorable.
That is completely not getting a date.
Still adorable.
She'll think it's adorable as she never goes out on a date with you. Right? So your adorableness is still landing you on playing video games by yourself. All right. Let's talk about building rapport. Okay, mirror and matching. Mirror and matching. So I want everybody to mirror. How would you do it? All the way is to sit how I'm sitting. Is to try to have the same posture that I'm sitting. And you're thinking like, well, I'm on Zoom. Okay, if you're on Zoom and they're like this, you do this. If they're like this, you're like this. It's how you bring them in. If they say the word y'all, you say the word y'all.
No, no. I say y'all all the time.
You think I said the word y'all for the first 34 years of my life? No, I started saying it on my 34th year of my life when I moved to Texas. Because if I say y'all, I become a lot more like the kind of people that I'm trying to sell Cutco to. And slow down. Because older people speak a lot slower than you talk. Match and mirror them. Their level of excitement will grow, not because of you, but because of what you talk about Cutco. Pace. So start at their pace and then build it up a little bit. %90 of communication is nonverbal. So smile more. You know, sit up straight. I think they can tell if you're excited to be there or not. They ask you, how's your day? How's it been? You're like, it's been an awesome day. Leave your problems at the door. They will be waiting for you on the way out. Let's talk about sharing your goals. I'm going to give you a couple of keys to not just sharing your goals, but doing something called enrolling your customers into your goals. So the first thing that you might not have realized you need to do is actually ask for permission. Mrs. Jones, is it okay if I share my goals with you? And then wait for them to be like, sure. Because if you just like, hey, Mrs. Jones, let me tell you my goals. My goals do this, like you haven't really given them a choice. Because once they choose yes, they're more invested into the conversation. Creates rapport, likability, since they're going to view you as more polite and more considerate. Next point is be vulnerable. Robin Sharma, this is actually my favorite quote of all time. It says, when you are vulnerable with people, they fall in love with you.
Okay.
When you are vulnerable with people, they fall in love with you. Have you ever noticed that before? That when somebody tells you a deep, dark secret, you start to like them more. And I'm not talking about a romantic love. I'm talking about the attraction to your story. And the more you tell them about it, the more they start to like it. And an extreme form of like is love. Right? And so when you tell somebody, when you become fast friends with somebody, it's probably because they told you something that was really deep and you were like, wow, I'm so, it's such a compliment that you would trust me enough to tell me this crazy stuff. Well, let me tell you some other stuff back. You know, and so maybe you have never really achieved a major goal before. Maybe you've achieved some stuff that you've had to kind of church up a little bit. You kind of dressed it up, trying to make it sound like, you know, I'm talking like when someone says that in their past job, they were a sandwich artist. That's what I'm talking about when you really haven't achieved a lot of awesome goals, but you try to make it sound like you do because your ego is not going to allow you to not try to look good. But what you're missing is you're missing the opportunity to let this person start to really like you. Because your customers would rather buy from someone they like versus someone they're impressed by. You're not trying to have them be impressed with you. You're trying to have them be impressed with Cutco. So I would tell people, Mrs. Jones, to be honest, I've never really achieved that many incredible goals before. I mean, I was on the varsity team in soccer because everybody that was a senior was on the varsity team on soccer because it was a really small school. I got on the soccer team because everybody got on the soccer team. In fact, it was actually kind of embarrassing for me because I'm from Argentina, and if you're from Argentina, you're supposed to be great at soccer, but I'm not very good. I have like anxiety when it comes to like, foot, eye, coordination. And I even scored on my own team one time. And I would tell that to my customers just to let them know, like, I was pretty average in school. I mean, I was only like a 3-point something, and I wasn't one of those kids that could just like take, exams and do great. I had to really, really bust my butt. And so, I've never accomplished anything that I was really proud about. So that's why this goal that I have in front of me is so important to me, because I want this to be my first goal that I reach. So for some of you guys, raise your hand if you started here in September. A couple of you guys started in September. So your number is $8,000, right? So what's $8,000? President's Club. Who here started in October? Okay, if you started in October, it's $6,000. I don't think anybody started in November, but if you did, it's $4,000. So that's why I'm so committed to reaching $6,000 in sales, because this is going to be the first thing I'm going to talk about on my resume. Yes, I'm going to talk about my GPA. Yes, I'll talk about my mom at her old job. I'm going to talk about all that. But what I'm really excited to talk about is this President's Club letter. I can't wait to tell my future employer at the job of my dreams that in my first semester, I got my first President's Club letter. So that's why I'm so excited to see this demo, is because Mrs. Jones, you're one of the people that could help me reach that level. And they're like, Mrs. Jones is like, I want to be one of these people that helps you reach the level. Like, what do I have to do? Well, what would she have to do in order to help you reach the level? What are 2 things that she could do? Number 1, she could buy Cutco. That would help you. And number 2, she could refer people, right? So either way, even if she doesn't buy, as long as you really got excited about this thing, she can be a piece of it. She can have a piece of it. Now, at this point, you've kind of made it pretty hardcore, right? So you got to kind of remove pressure to make them want it a little bit more. So Mrs. Jones, I know I'm really excited about this goal, but just please don't feel like you have to buy anything just to help me out. Cutco is actually a little bit too expensive to buy just to be nice, which is such a powerful push away. Oh my goodness. It's a little bit too expensive to buy just to be nice. But here's what I've seen over my last couple of months is that most of the people that I've done demos for, they really love Cutco. In fact, and this is something I would add, my blank has owned it for 15 years. So, and you got to have a record, right? So let me ask this question to you guys so we can get a record. Who knows someone that's had Cutco for a really long time? Okay, so how long have they owned it? What's like actually the amount of time?
I don't know, 60+ years.
Okay, so right now the record for 60. Okay, so Silvera in my office, her Nana has had it for 60 years. So I want everyone to write down. So in fact, one of the representatives in my division, her grandma has had it for 60 years. Does anybody have had it longer than 60 years, or maybe 60 years-ish, even 30, 40, 50? Like 70 years? Guys, if you're not sharing this, dude, it doesn't matter if it's your own Nana. It doesn't matter if it's not somebody in your office. Be like, it's so crazy. This girl in my office, her grandma had it for almost 60 years. So if you do see something that you like, what my job is to help you get the greatest deal of all time on it today. But really, Mrs. Jones, my number 1 goal is that you like me enough so you feel comfortable referring me to some of the really nice friends that you have. But don't worry about that now. You can decide if you really like me by the end of this demo. They already like you. What are you gonna do? Like, curse out their dog halfway through? Like at this point, like they want to buy, they want to give you referrals. The only thing that has to happen is Cutco has to be good. Congratulations. That's done. We already took care of the hard part for you. They already like you because of how you built this up. And your customers should basically have already wanted to buy before they even see what the product is. As long as the product is good, well, good thing it is. Okay, what's next? I want you to imagine. All right, there's a couple of you guys. You've been to this restaurant before. Could you imagine if all of a sudden you went to a brand new restaurant and this is what they put on the table? Right? What would be the face that you would make? Who would here would almost get sick? Right?
It's a rat.
Right? How gross is that? So here's the deal. When you do the junk knife page, you got to make the face you just made. I want you to imagine our friend here imprinted onto your frontal cortex for the rest of your life when you do demos. You got to make the gross face. Are you kidding me? You got to get them involved, right? Don't read to them about wooden handles. Transfer your enthusiasm. And the enthusiasm here is how disgusting wooden handles are, right? You got to make the gross face. I mean, I'm telling you, just remember this little varmint. That thing is freaking fried. Comes with some lovely potatoes. I don't want to tell you what those balls are, by the way. You want to gross them out. Then they'll be on your page. Mrs. Jones, wooden handles are so disgusting. They carry bacteria, odors, grease. Mrs. Jones, if you could wring out a wooden handle, would you drink the water? Well, what's happening is that handle is actually coming into contact with the sweat on your hands, as well as the liquid on the cutting boards you're cutting raw meats with. That is all being transferred. Plastic handles, Mrs. Jones, are so dangerous. They can slip out of your hand. It makes it so it's dangerous while you're washing your dishes if you have to do it by hand. Stuff can come apart. The comes apart from the metal that's holding onto it, and when you push really hard, that's how you can slip and cut yourself. And imagine, you've got like one of your kids that's trying to cut a watermelon with a really dull knife, and she pushes, and then slips. And then you're not there because she wanted to cut up some watermelons and and stuff like when you weren't at the house. That's how a lot of accidents in the kitchen will happen, Mrs. Jones, because of dangerous, dull knives. Mrs. Jones, do you know what's more dangerous, a sharp knife or a dull knife? You got to ask that question because she might think, my knives, I don't want them to be too sharp. It might come when I kids. No, Mrs. Jones, it's actually a lot safer if the knives are sharp because that way you don't have to put any pressure when you're doing it. It's smooth, it's easy. And then when your kids are starting to cook at the age of 13 to 18 years old, you're going to be really grateful that you have really safe, effective tools. Safe, effective tools. Could you imagine if you had a screwdriver that was sort of stripped out and you were trying to really get into it? It would take forever and you might slip and hurt yourself. It's the same thing with kitchen knives. So the general problem is the knives. The specific problem are these details. Right? You guys have probably all heard this grandpa saying, if you buy it nice, you'll have to buy it twice. Or good things aren't cheap and cheap things aren't good. Right? The reason why we say this stuff is because it taps into their childhood of when their grandpa used to say this stuff. Typically, their parents might have, but it's always the grandpa that had the wisdom. Your mom says it to you too? Well, if they say it to you, say it back to them. Remember, you're adults now. And you can talk to an adult just like an adult. Why don't you just use one of the examples of stuff that you bought that's cheap that you live to regret? Who can give me an example of something that you bought that was super, super cheap that you really regretted it after a couple of weeks or months of owning it? Headphones, right? Chargers. Like Mrs. Jones, I bought how many pairs of headphones now? I probably have bought like 7 pairs of headphones that were each 20 bucks. And if I would have bought the $100 pair of headphones, I'd still have the same pair versus having crappy ones all the time. Glasses, right? Running shoes.
But a curling iron, it was cheap and it died halfway through curling my hair.
Cheap curling iron, right? These are things that you need to talk about. So be like, hey, Mrs. Jones, one of the things I'm learning at this job is that, man, once I can afford things, once I'm a married homeowner like you, I can't wait to be able to buy things of high value so I don't have to replace them over and over again. You guys should write that line down. You know, once I can't wait to be I can't wait to be a homeowner like yourself that's, had a job for a long time. That way I can invest into things versus having to buy these cheap curling irons. So now I've really learned that if you buy something cheap, it's not going to be good. Right. And I'm sure as a homeowner, you understand that. And you nod your head and they nod their head, because when you nod your head at somebody, the psychological response is to nod your head back. Why are you guys nodding? Is that weird? Right? You're trying to like hold your head. Why am I nodding? Okay. Match and mirror, right? These are some of the features that we're going to talk about that make Cutco more expensive, right? The universal wedge lock handle, right? This was designed by an industrial engineer. He studied over 700 pairs of hands. That is such a weird job. Could you imagine if that was your job to study 700 pairs of hands? You're like, okay, on Monday, I'm going to study 123 hands. On Tuesday, I'm going to study 150 hands. And Wednesday, I'm going big 200 hands, right? But that's what this person did to make the world's perfect handle, right? It is the only company in the world, the only cutlery in the world that took the time to actually study so they would make the handles more comfortable, which grandmas loved. Thermaresin is the same type of material they use to make football helmets, right? The same thing that protects 300 to 400 pound guys that are running at each other at full speed. This is what protects their head. This is what we trust enough, this material, to protect us. We use that on our handles. Why? Because it is the most durable material that we could have found for handles. And it's dishwasher safe. So it's super durable, but easy to clean. Full tang. We do use all the steel. The steel is the same kind of steel they use in surgical instruments. And the double D edge, this is applied by specialized computers that grind the steel over this wheel that's encrusted with diamonds to make the sharpest possible finish in the history of cutlery. Each wheel costs thousands of dollars, and we have one for every single knife. Why? Because we just want you to make sure that you have a knife that's awesome. The guarantee. Mrs. Jones, let me ask you a question. Let's say that this one knife, and I would hold it up if you've got a piece of it. Some of you guys have one stuff, some of you guys have it from your sample kit. If this one knife cost $1,000, what would be some of the things that you would expect out of the guarantee? Maybe pause the demo for a second and ask them that. If this one knife cost $1,000, don't break the poker face. They'll be like, but it's not. Don't be weak. Keep it strong. Have fun with it. Be like, hey, Ms. Jones, if this one piece of Cutco that I have here cost $1,000, what would be some of the things that you would expect out of the guarantee? Right? They're gonna say things like, oh my God, like if anything ever happened, like they would replace it for free. Right? Like stay sharp forever. Like they wouldn't even know what to say. Like they'd give us like 2 points of our 4-point guarantee typically. Mrs. Jones, let me ask you a question. Do you or your spouse own high quality tools, like maybe like Craftsman tools or Snap-on? And if they're like, oh, I don't know, do you guys have that red chest of tools in your garage? Okay, that's Craftsman tools. So I don't know if you know, but when your husband spent $2,000 on just that, the tools cost extra. The reason why he did that is because those guarantee. And typically middle income people who value their money are the ones that buy high quality tools. Typically, You know, because most people would probably consider themselves middle income. By the way, sometimes even like upper income people consider themselves middle income because they are like friends with people that are richer. So it's like always hang out with people that are richer and you always consider yourself middle income so you can always get better. But anyways, if you say, yeah, most middle income people, like my family, you know, they own high quality tools. So that way you don't have to like get someone to fix stuff for you all the time, right? Well, Cutco is like the tools that you have in the garage, except for your kitchen. This is super valuable if you say this in front of the husband when you're doing the demo for the husband and the wife. Because all of a sudden, she will look at him and say, uh-huh. So that way, he doesn't say, oh, well, I don't know if we need something like this or we can't afford it when he dropped 2 G's on just the chest. Just want you guys to know, does anybody have that big red chest of tools in your garage? That thing is $2,000 with no tools inside of it. Just the chest is $2,000. So don't tell me people can't afford a homemaker per se, because they use those tools maybe once or twice a month. Maybe 3 times a month if you really have a fixer-upper of a home. You know how often they're going to use their Cutco? 3 times a day. Forever. And so you're sharing this stuff so that way Mrs. Jones has something to say if the husband's like, no, I don't know if it's a little too much money. And she's like, no, it's not. Your tools cost more. These are right. Except they're not going to say any. She'll look at him. He'll know what that means. And then they'll buy the set. Let's talk about closing. All right. When does closing start? In the report. So closing starts with the report. Closing starts on the phone. When you're scheduling the appointment. I remember saying, Mrs. Jones, I can't wait to meet you. So that way you know why your friends were so excited to refer me and Cutco to you. I can't wait to meet you. So that way I can explain to you why your friends really thought that you should see this demo. They're like, oh, they can't wait to meet me. Nobody has ever said that to me before. Dude, how many times do you think Mrs. Jones gets told, I can't wait to meet you? I'm really looking forward to meeting you, right? Closing definitely starts on the phone. When you jump on Zoom, closing continues. Mrs. Jones, thank you so much for making the time to see me. I can't wait to show you this presentation. I've been getting excited about this one all day because your friends told me that they thought you were going to really love it. Now, before I get into it, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Mind if I ask you a couple of questions? So that way I don't have to sell you anything, but I can maybe give you a little bit of guidance. Cool, Mrs. Jones. So tell me about your kids. What do they do for fun? Cool. How many do you have? Mrs. Jones, what's the meal that your kids always request that you make? Mrs. Jones, what's the meal that your kids always request that you make? Mrs. Jones, what are you known for on Thanksgiving or Christmas? Or what's your husband known for on Thanksgiving or Christmas? What's the thing that y'all love to indulge in? Ms. Jones, what's something that might have been kind of challenging to cut in the past? Is there anything that you've ever noticed that you avoid buying whole because it's tough to cut? Ms. Jones, is there anything that you avoid buying whole because it's tough to cut? You know, like squash or pineapple or watermelon, stuff like that, right? So I give them some suggestions to like feed their answers. Ms. Jones, tell me about your family. What do you guys do over the holidays? Mrs. Jones, tell me about your family. What do you guys do over the holidays? So valuable for getting referrals later. Also, so that way they can start saying names of family members for like Christmas present ideas. Mrs. Mrs. Jones, how long have you lived in your neighborhood? What's it like to be in your neighborhood? Mrs. Jones, tell me about what do you do? How do you like? Here's a great question that I ask if the person is married. Ms. Jones, how long have you been married for? They're like, oh, 15 years. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. I can barely keep a goldfish alive. Can you tell me what is your secret to being happily married? I used to ask that question all the time to every customer. My favorite answer I ever got was, you can either be right or you can be happy. But you cannot be both. This old man just stared at me in the eye and be like, just remember this. His wife was right next to him. It's like, you can either be right or you can be happy. You can't be both. And she's like, that is correct. You just try asking for your wife to making you brownies when she's wrong. You'd be getting no brownies at that point. 0 brownies, no cookies either. Very crappy chocolate chips. Right? Love getting advice from married couples on how to be happily married. Ms. Jones, divorce. Any advice on how to not do that? No, I'm just kidding. Don't ask that question. All right. Next one. Your intro and your rapport. We've talked a little bit about that. Talking about how committed you are to hitting your goals. And at this point, everyone should have a measurable goal. Even if you didn't have them before, it's President's Club. Now, if you have already gotten President's Club, the next goal is Dirty 30. When's your Dirty 30 graduation date? When are you going to reach $10,000 in sales? By the way, don't worry about Dirty 30 unless you've hit President's Club already. President's Club comes first, then Dirty 30. You already hit Dirty 30. Next level is Fair and Show Team qualification, 15K. You've already hit that one. When you hit in bonus, that's 20K. Higher numbers than that, talk to your manager about. But you always got to have a measurable number. And you have to have a date that you're going to hit it by. If you're not sure how to do it, work backwards. Talk to your manager tomorrow when you talk to them on PDI. Videos and third-party stories. Get hyped about the knives. If you have a piece of Cutco, don't show the video. Cut food with it instead on Zoom with your customer or in person with your customer. One of my representatives, Jade, would cut a tomato, a pineapple, and peel a carrot on every appointment on Zoom with her customers over COVID last year. She would get so excited. She's like, yeah, I probably spent about $15 a week on groceries. She's like, I'd sell $1,500, $2,000 a week easily on that though. So the investment was like 10 times overshot by that. Okay. Third-party stories. You need to ask all of the people that you've ever met that own Cutco the following question. Mrs. Jones, what's your favorite knife? And what do you use it for? Mrs. Jones, what's your favorite knife and what do you use it for? And then eventually you will never have to tell people about the spatula spreader. All you're going to do is tell Mrs. Jones what your grandma loves about the spatula spreader. You'll never have to tell people about the petite carver. You'll tell them what your dad loves about the petite carver. You've got a third-party story for every single piece of Cutco. You'll sell every piece of Cutco because it's so much more powerful when your customers can sell it for you. Cutlery comparisons. You need to delete about. You got to talk about it during that section of the demo, like you are actually selling stuff. Like these knives are really high quality. I'd even tell my customers, if Cutco didn't exist, this is what I would invest into if I was a homeowner like you. How many? Doing a demo for Mrs. Jones, a grandma in one of my demos here. And at the end of the demo, I just heard, Mrs. Jones, have you thought about any holiday gifts? And she's like, yeah, how many? And we ended up doing 6 galley sets for all of her granddaughters this time of the year. She was going to buy, it was funny, they were going to do 4 galley sets. And then one of the granddaughters was actually in the house and asked us what we were doing. And grandma's like, oh, I'm buying some cutlery for some of the other grandkids, but I didn't think you wanted anything. You want clothes, right? And she's like, no, I want kitchen knives too. And then so we ended up doing 5. And at that point, couldn't leave out the grandkid. He was only like, 15 years old, but she was like, well, I'll put it in the closet and I'll get it for him whenever he graduates college. Cutco is going to only go up in price anyway, so might as well take care of it. Closing is all about having them feel like you want them to own it. How do you make them feel like you want them to own it? Not that you're trying to sell it to them. Like you're like, God, I hope you get this stuff. You ever like hung out with your friends that's about to buy something and you want them to buy it because you want to use it? That is the same kind of vibe. It's all about how you respond to their first no. Have got to follow that sound of the word no. So Mrs. Jones, what do you think? Oh, I don't know. I'm not interested. No problem. Let me show you the next item. They need to feel how excited you are to show them something smaller. Your level of excitement should go up as you show them something smaller. The objection cycle all starts with the words, I understand how you feel. If I were in your position, I'd feel the same way too. That's why I'm so excited to show you the galley set. Them feeling like you really want them to own it also has to do with you wanting to show them all of their options just so they can see them. You know, somebody earlier today was saying, you know, I had a person that only wanted to get the ultimate set. What should I have done? You say, hey, no problem. I definitely want to sell that to you. But do you mind if I show you all of your options just so you can compare? So that way you can be sure of what you want to get. And then you follow the manual through the rest of the demo. Can I show this to you just so I can practice? Mrs. Jones, can I see if I could get you some more free stuff? I just really think you're going to take advantage and really use this stuff. Do you see if I can maybe get you some more free Cutco? Hold on, let me see what my office has that we can get you for free. Let me see what my office has that we can get you for free is a much better thing to say than let me call my manager to get you a discount. Let me see what else my office has that we can get you for free. Let me see if there's something we can do on this thing to get you a better deal. Hold on a second. And then literally you should have your manager on speed dial. Don't ever say I'm going to call my boss. That sounds like, hey, let me call this guy so he can close your ass. That's what it sounds like when you say something like, let me call my boss. Now, let me see what my office can do. We have some stuff that we can maybe do extra for free, just for fun, just in case. So that way you have all your options. That way you have all of your options is something that moms love to hear. Let me give you all of the options. So that way you can compare and make a good decision. Mrs. Jones, honestly, my professional recommendation based on everything you told me earlier is I think that you should try it out. I really do. I think it would really benefit you. And here's what's great. You can try it out for just the 20% today. If you don't love it, I will personally offer to pay for your return shipping. Now, don't offer this unless you're going to, but I used to offer it. It's only $10 to pay for the return shipping, and it'll never happen. They'll never send it back. Getting Cutco is like getting a puppy. Like you're not going to return it unless you don't have a soul. Right? So encourage them to try it out, even if it's just one knife. Mrs. Jones, try out the trimmer. It's only 70 something bucks. It's like 40 bucks a month. It's like $1 a day. You're probably not going to miss $1 a day. You probably lose $1 a day, but I bet you're going to love having that one knife for the rest of your life. Cool. Can I show you how to maybe get a piece of Cutco if you had something else? They need to feel like you want them to own it. Like it will make your day if they buy it today, not that you make a sale. The difference is subtle, but it's all about the transfer of enthusiasm and your love for the product line that you know is going to help them out. That's it. Was I on mute the whole time? Okay, you guys heard that?
Oh,
That would be really awesome. If I was muted. I think I would have gotten a text message about it.
No, we heard it. We got it.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Here's a couple of those final I put on there. All right, any questions? I realized I didn't click on that.
That's what we were looking for, is those final clicks.
My bad, my bad. I have it on, I have two different PowerPoints in front of me, one on the iPad, and I forgot that I didn't click all the way through on the right
Yes.
one.
You did not click all the way through, so.
Okay, okay. Well, I got it all now there. There you go. And I will post the link to this PowerPoint slideshow on your GroupMe's. So that way, if you guys want to look at it again, y'all can look at it again.
Can you post it just in the chat for us too? Like when you get a chance?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
That would be, that way the people could grab it. So I would suggest for all of you to make sure that those notes that he had up on the screen, that they get into your training manual, so that way you're using them. Here in the message doesn't really do much for you unless you actually use them in the mix. So so that's a big deal. So I'll pause there.